They say time only flows one way, a straight line, a river that doesn't bend. But what if someone knew the shortcuts? What if a child not even old enough to drive had already stood beneath the red sky of Mars and wandered through Gettysburg barefoot, days before Lincoln ever spoke a word? Not as a dream, not as a metaphor, but as an assignment? That's what Andrew Basiago claims. Not behind closed doors, but on camera, on the record, in speeches, affidavits, interviews, a lawyer, a lecturer, and to some, a time traveler. He says he was recruited by the U.S. government through a top-secret DARPA program called Project Pegasus, an initiative powered by forgotten Tesla blueprints, built on the belief that time isn't a limit, it's a tool. And if that's true, we're not just living history. We're living in someone else's edit of it. This is Mind Veil, where memory meets mystery, and the veil between them is always just a little too thin. According to Basiago, he was only 6 when it began. Not chosen by accident, but by design. His father, Raymond Basiago, an engineer contracted through Parsons Corporation, was allegedly involved in early teleportation work and brought Andrew into the fold. Project Pegasus, he says, wasn't just theory. It was boots-on-the-ground experimentation, and children made better subjects because adults, they cracked. Their minds buckled, their bodies resisted. But kids, they were pliable. They bounced back. They could forget. Or so the government hoped. Andrew describes jump rooms, metal chambers humming with energy, where he'd step in from a facility in New Jersey and emerge seconds later in New Mexico. Not years from now, not in a spaceship, just there, instantly. The implication: the U.S. government didn't just discover time travel, they tested it. Repeatedly, quietly, with children at the controls. If that's true, it's not science fiction. It's state-sponsored science fact, with the receipts buried. Somewhere no one's allowed to dig. It sounds unbelievable. But Basiago points to a photograph, real, archived, and public. Taken at Gettysburg in 1863, it shows a crowd gathered around Lincoln, and in the corner, a boy, awkward, slouched, out of place, wearing a coat several sizes too large, no shoes. Andrew says, "That's me." He claims it was one of his earliest missions, a test to see how well a child could survive. A one-way trip to the past. He says they dressed him in period clothes from a thrift store. He lost his shoes during the jump. He wandered the crowd alone, a quiet observer, in a moment too big for memory. To believers, the photo is evidence. To skeptics, just coincidence and a trick of the mind. But Andrew doesn't blink. He insists he remembers the smell of the field, the sound of the speech, the pressure in his ears, when time snapped shut behind him. And that mission, not the last. He says he traveled to the year 2045, retrieved data from glowing cubes, stood in mirrored halls, while the future looked back at him. And when he returned, things were different. Paintings out of place, memories misaligned, the timeline subtly wrong, like time had noticed him and blinked. To understand how this could even be possible, you have to go back, not just in time, but into the mind of a man who lived ahead of it, Nikola Tesla. When Tesla died in 1943, the FBI seized his papers. Officially, it was about national security. Unofficially, some say those files contained the blueprints for bending the universe, notes on radiant energy, a form of electromagnetic power Tesla believed could manipulate time and space itself. Basiago claims these ideas weren't shelved, they were weaponized. Project Pegasus, he says, used Tesla's theories to construct devices called chronovisors, machines that didn't just transport bodies, but could view the past like a hologram, like tuning a television to a different century. He says he watched Lincoln speak in private chambers, saw Jesus walk through a village, observed Nixon rehearse his resignation years before it happened. And here's the twist. Tesla isn't the only one who spoke of such machines. A Benedictine monk named Father Pellegrino Ernetti made similar claims in the 1960s. Different country, same device, coincidence or convergence? If even part of it is real, then time isn't hidden, it's stored, and someone, somewhere, knows how to press play. Basiago insists the missions didn't stop with Earth. He claims Project Pegasus didn't just crack time. They leapt across space to Mars. And he wasn't alone. He names others, most famously, a young man named Barry Soetoro, who he alleges was none other than a pre-presidency Barack Obama. Together, he says, they used jump rooms hidden in U.S. facilities to teleport to the Martian surface not through rockets, but through resonance. He describes Martian outposts built beneath the crust, corridors carved into ancient rock, and beings, non-human, non-hostile, that watched but didn't intervene. No weapons, no greetings, just observation. He recalls the red dust, the silence pressing in like gravity, and a strange sense that they weren't the first and wouldn't be the last. Of course, it sounds impossible, but he gives details, names, locations, methods, and he doesn't flinch. His voice doesn't waver. If it's fiction, it's flawlessly rehearsed. But if it's not, then we've already stepped onto other worlds. And the only thing more terrifying than the journey is the fact that we didn't notice. Andrew says he wasn't the only child. Walking through time, there were dozens, maybe more, selected for their health, obedience, and, above all, their ability to forget. Because adults, he claims, returned from the jumps fractured, mind unraveling, body rebelling. But children were resilient, expendable, forgettable. He recalls classmates in the program, some wide-eyed and excited, others too quiet, too broken. He remembers being trained to memorize surroundings, to collect data like a spy, then return and report as if time was just another foreign country. But not every child made it back. Some, he says, were lost in time. Others were left, stranded in the past, abandoned in possible futures. He speaks of it casually, almost carefully, as if even now, decades later, he knows not to say too much. There's no list, no confirmation, no reunion, only names. He half remembers when the interviews go longer than expected. If he's inventing this, it's the cruelest fiction imaginable. But if he's not, then somewhere, in the cracks between centuries, children are still waiting for someone to come back. Time travel, Basiago says, isn't tidy. It doesn't slip you in and out like a silent observer. It changes things. Each jump, each mission left ripples. At first, small, barely noticeable. But over time, those ripples became fractures. He describes returning from trips to a world that felt off. Photos slightly different, buildings repainted. People remembering things he didn't, or forgetting things he swore happened. He calls them quantum displacements, glitches in the fabric of history, caused by even the smallest presence, in the wrong place at the wrong time. He says time is not a line. It's a living map, constantly redrawn. And if he's right, then the timeline we live in now may not be the first draft or even the second. It could be the result of hundreds of edits, some accidental, some intentional. And we wouldn't know, because every change overwrites the last, quietly, completely. The question isn't, did it happen? It's, how would we even know if it did? Ask the government about Project Pegasus and you'll get nothing. No files, no denials, no comment. DARPA has never confirmed it. There are no declassified memos, no press conferences, no evidence it existed, except for Basiago and the names he gives: William Stillings, Major Ed Dames, even Barack Obama, under the name Barry Soetoro. Journalists have asked. Obama's camp called it absurd. DARPA said nothing at all. To most, it's nonsense. To scientists, a violation of physics. But to believers, the silence is exactly what you'd expect from a project designed to erase itself. If time can be rewritten, so can records, so can memories, so can truth. Basiago doesn't beg to be believed. He just keeps talking as if telling the story is the only way to keep it from disappearing again. And maybe that's the real point. Because even if none of it's true, we keep listening. because something about it feels like a memory we haven't had yet. Maybe Andrew Basiago is lying. Maybe it's just a story, well-rehearsed, oddly compelling, stacked layer by layer until even he believes it. But maybe he's not. Maybe he really did walk through time, barefoot at Gettysburg, dust clinging to his coat, as history unfolded unaware. Maybe he stood on Mars under a silent red sky, waiting for orders from a world that still denies he was ever there. And maybe the scariest part isn't that he's wrong, it's that he's right, and we've already forgotten. Because this story isn't just about time travel. It's about something deeper, our need to believe that time can be undone, that secrets can be kept, that someone, somewhere, is bending the future into shape without telling the rest of us. Project Pegasus might be a hoax, or it might be the first crack in a dam that was never meant to break. But either way, it lingers, because the best mysteries don't close the case, they leave it open, just wide enough for possibility to slip through. This is Mind Veil, where mystery meets memory, and the veil between them is always just a little too thin. If this story pulled you in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the first link in the description to dive deeper into the Mind Veil archives, a growing library of the strange, the forgotten, and the not quite impossible.